Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where we've got the TNT takes for you on the Amazing Race 34, episode 11. That's right, I'm your host, Chris, and with me tonight is my co-host again, Michelle. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm good. Feeling good after the end of that episode.
Yeah, we're getting to the pointy end. Can you believe it? It's going to be the end of another season next week. We're going to have a finale episode. I can't believe it's come so quickly, I feel like.
I know, it's just amazing, and it feels like, it feels like Emily's been in pain forever, basically.
It does feel like she's been in pain forever, and I feel so bad for her, and we'll probably talk about that a little bit as we go through this episode as well. But don't you just sometimes, Michelle, feel sad by the end of a season when you're like, I've gotten attached to these people, I know them so well, and they've been on our screens for, close to 3 months now, and now we're saying goodbye to everybody.
And it's not just that, it's just because I love this show so much, and I want to keep watching it. I want to watch it all the time. And, I know at least Canada's casting, but they don't go out of Canada. So it's not as though we see the world. And I love seeing the world, like seeing Iceland today was amazing. And Australia isn't even casting, won't know if it'll come back. So have to rely on the US race to show us around. And yeah, it'll be gone in a week.
Yeah, well, luckily, it sounds like season 35 is definitely a thing. Filming may have even started already. Season 36 seems to be confirmed. There's a lot of rumors going out there as well that we will definitely get 2 more seasons. So that makes me happy to know that we will definitely get to see Phil come back with maybe 2 new seasons, with 2 new seasons full of new cast members coming out there as well. New people to fall in love with, but it is going to be sad saying goodbye to some of these people. Let's say hello to a few people that have been very active in the lives. Lovable Nikki, welcome. Good morning. Thank you for jumping on so early. Christian Gell also.
Hey,
Christian jumps into everything. Like, Christian, I'm so appreciative of you being in all the lives, jumping in, I believe, early over there as well. And Christian is saying that he thought it would be the end of Emily and Molly this episode.
So did I. I was so scared, Christian. Oh my God.
Yeah. And you're a little bit more in tune with the international versions than myself, Michelle. I predominantly follow the US show. If I do have time in the future, I'd love to cover the Amazing Race Australia if it comes back as well. It's just this year it didn't work out for me with my busy schedule outside of this and having to balance the podcast with doing coverage of all the shows that I want to cover. But Christian here says that the Amazing Race Canada is losing ratings. Are you aware of that they're struggling?
No, but it's always been quite a healthy sort of rating show in Canada. And, it's usually I think they normally put it on in summer, their summertime. So it's like their summertime show. Yeah, look, it's always rated really well. So I don't think it would be really badly, rating. But, to go down a bit, doesn't surprise me because it can only stay up for so long.
Yeah. From memory, Christian, you're from Canada, right? So you would know. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember you saying you're from Canada. So looking at the Amazing Race 34, episode 11, they get to travel to Iceland. You just mentioned you were very excited to see them traveling there. It's called the Land of Fire and Ice because there's been so many volcanic eruptions that's happened. And that's why we've got that fertile, green and lush
Mm,
atmosphere there, or the terrain. And it very much reminds me, Michelle, of New Zealand. Like when I look at it, I think this is the
yes.
one that reminds me the most of New Zealand, because New Zealand's got the same history with volcanic, very fertile ground,
Mm,
greenery. It looked cold and miserable like the South Island lots of
yeah.
times look like over here in New Zealand. That's why I live on the North Island. But it reminded me so much, like the whole landscape reminded me of
Mm.
New Zealand.
Do you have tectonic plates coming together in New Zealand, or very close?
Listen, obviously I'm not from New Zealand, so I kind of feel like Sugar when she had to answer the question on the Challenge Australia this week. But from memory, and that's a little bit of a throwaway. I know some people don't watch that, but I believe on the South Island it's got two plates that came together. That's why we've
Okay.
got the Alps. I think that's why the Alps got pushed out, and
Mm,
it sort of goes around to the outside, towards the east of the country. So it kind of
right.
goes across the bottom half of or sort of through the South Island, and then goes past the east. If someone knows more than me, apologies if I didn't do that right, but I believe we do
Mm,
have that. But I
yes.
think the key thing here is the fact that we've got volcanic activity. In fact, we've had an earthquake go off yesterday, Michelle, close to
Wow.
Lake Taupo, which is
Ah,
close to one of the biggest supervolcanoes that's dormant
yes.
in New Zealand. So
Yes.
scary stuff when you hear that stuff going on.
Oh,
It's like
definitely.
maybe I shouldn't be living in New Zealand when we've got volcanic activity and earthquakes happening. I don't know
Well, it
why I chose to come
depends
live
how
here.
active the volcanoes are.
Yeah.
But I love volcanoes. I mean, growing up as a child, I studied them so much. And one year I'd really like to see one, but I'm also scared that it's going to erupt when I'm there. So, something that Phil has done is he's actually had a dinner on the rim of a volcano. And you can search up the photos online. And it's one of the bucket list things he always wanted to do. And I'm pretty sure he's in like a suit or a tuxedo on the rim of this volcano and about to sit down and have a dinner. So
Is it like active? Do they have like, active like
I thought it had a fair bit of smoke behind it. I'm pretty sure it was an
hmm,
active volcano. I mean, what would it be on your bucket list to go and have something at a dormant one? I don't think so. And he's,
jeez.
he's pretty much of a thrill
I
seeker.
wouldn't
So
be able to I wouldn't be able to concentrate on the food. Like afterwards, if people
I
ask me what did you
know.
eat, I'd be like, no idea. I was
Yeah.
just bricking it the whole time while I was up there, just thinking, this
Well, and
is a
I'm
really cool it's
assuming
an Instagram moment, but I want to get out of there.
But I'm assuming there is some seismic activity before a volcano explodes. So if there's nothing at all, I'm assuming he would have done his research, and whoever set it up for him and would have seen if there was any seismic activity at all. I'm sure he wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
But they're pretty good photos that I've seen.
Yeah. Christian here says, yes, sir, Canada represent here in the live. And
Uh,
then Ellen, welcome back to the live stream, says, hi, Michelle and Chris. I'm back in Australia after my holiday to the UK and France, but jet lag has kicking my butt. So I do know how long I'm going to be able to tune in, but wanted to say hello. Ellen,
Hi.
always very welcome to jump on the lives and say hello. We love having you here. And we love the fact that you are still following it, even if it's at your own pace, because I know you're a couple of episodes probably behind
Yeah.
where we are currently. But what a great, location to go to in this episode.
Oh my
We get
God.
all of them
Gorgeous.
also in helicopters, taking this helicopter ride over this landscape, which would have been such a bucket list moment. And
Oh,
even though we lose a team here, at least this is something that they will remember for the rest of their lives.
oh my gosh. I was once told many years ago, Greenland is icy and Iceland is green. And I was like, well, that's they were named the wrong things, weren't they?
Yeah.
Um, and it was just beautiful. It was just the big caverns, and then there was the waterfalls, and then it was so lush, and then there was rocks, and it was just so different to what I've seen anywhere. It was just
Mm.
very different.
And also just the vast mass of land without any kind of like civilization around them, and
Mm,
just being out in the middle of nowhere, I think would have been such a cool thing for everybody to experience when they've been in
mm.
some of these European cities where I'm sure it's a lot more crowded and there's the hustle and bustle and
Oh, definitely.
busyness around you. I think it's one of the things that made Jordan stand out as well, was the fact that there were periods where they were almost in isolation, but here they were truly in isolation when they were traveling through Iceland. And it
Mm.
was quite interesting because David here says that this was a bucket list item for him as well, because he's a helicopter mechanic. And obviously, normally when he's in a helicopter, it's for work, but this time he could do it for leisure. So for the first time, he didn't have to worry about working, and he got to experience this here in this leg. And Derek feeling like he's in a James Bond movie, and Claire
Well,
saying
yeah.
she's his James Bond girl then, or the Bond girl.
Well, look, it was such a beautiful place, and normally in James Bond films they do have something where very scenic when they do, aerial shots. So yeah, it was good for that.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, he did do some James Bond activities later on when he had to go do the roadblock and so forth. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Ellen here says, I've got Emily and Molly as my last remaining team on my draft because I lost Aubrey and David this episode. So it does sound like Ellen has caught up. Big sad face having lost Aubrey and David here. And Ellen, listen, I feel you. It's not going too good with my draft right now for Survivor 43 as well. Like I am down to, I think, don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I'm down to 2 people, and Jake, my co-host, still has 4 people in the game. And if I wasn't competitive, I wouldn't care, but I'm competitive, Michelle, so it's hurting. So I
I
feel
picked
you.
Cody, and he's still there. So
Cody is one of my 2 that I've still got left. So there's still hope, slimmer of hope.
And I picked For Amazing Race. By the second episode, I picked the twins and Derek and Claire, and look at that. Last episode, I got 2 of the final 3.
I think going into next season 35, we have to do a draft for this podcast because we didn't do it for the first 2 seasons that we covered. And both times it was because it was such a last minute thing pulling together to do the recaps. But I think to do it justice, I've had so much fun doing the drafts for some of the other shows that I cover.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that we get on it, Michelle, next time and keep me honest.
I do like doing, I don't mind doing a draft before the first episode, but I do like doing my draft at the end of the first episode. When I do the podcasting about I don't do the podcasting for the mole, but I pick my top however many, and we do that after the first episode, so at least we can get an idea of the players and how they play. How do you like to do a draft?
Yeah, we normally do it beforehand, so it's all based on just seeing them talk in their little preseason clips. But we could talk about
that's how I did Cody. I think if I would have taken it on the first episode, I wouldn't have put Cody up there.
Oh, I was all in when I saw the first episode. I was like, yes, Tony Vlacho's number 2.0. I'm going to go for this guy. He's going to get all the confessionals. Because the thing is, if we do this next season, and sorry for those that don't want to hear anything outside of the episode, but if we do this, yeah, we'll get back to it in a minute. But if we do this thing going into next season, what I normally do is there's points categories. So you'll have, based on the amount of confessionals they have, based on where they finish, we'll think of some interesting way to bring points in. So it's not just who wins the show outright. So there's a bit of a point structure around it. So we'll talk about that. But yeah. Going back. Also want to say hello to Iga here in the live, saying hello. He says James Bond rhetoric reminds me of a show coming next year called Road to a Million, where teams race to only Bond locations for 1.5 million. Wow, sounds interesting.
Wow. Well, they're not coming to Australia because I don't think any Bond film came here.
Right, I don't know.
Sure.
But that would be pretty cool. That would be pretty cool. I need to check out for that. So they all arrive in Iceland with these helicopters. They have to retrieve a flag at the top of a cliff that's full of ice, and they have to climb the cliff.
You're not going to say the name.
What was the name? I forgot the name.
I don't know. I can't say any of the names. The letters went the entire length of the screen. I'm like, pardon? I thought, I wonder if Chris is going to attempt any of the names, because I just put something like, okay, they're driving to a fissure, because I couldn't tell you the rest of it.
I think I had one name. The place where they had to go for, where they did the swim and where the tectonic plates met was called Silfra or something like that is what it was called. But yeah, no, I don't know the name for this one, but they have to go up this, I guess, cliff.
Glacier, wasn't it?
Glacier. Yeah, it's kind of like that with ice on the side, and they had like a
Yeah,
pickaxe and with the shoes. It was quite fun to
yeah.
see people attempt it. Some people did better than others. Derek, I think, took the reward for having, or the award, I should say, for having the funniest technique going up there with his feet pointing
Yes.
outwards like a frog when he was trying to climb. It was quite funny to see.
Yeah, it was. It was really strange. And maybe
Yeah.
that's why it took him a while. I don't know. David was a bit like a fish out of water in this episode. He just wasn't comfortable at all.
Yeah. Well, technically, he needed to be a fish in water this
Yeah.
episode, and that didn't go too well. But we'll talk about that in a little
Yeah.
bit. This first one, I think, was pretty much everybody gets through it without any hiccups. I mean,
Mm,
we both knew coming into this, watching it, that Aubrey and Claire has a fear of heights, but they both seem to get past that pretty
mm,
easily. And I think the fact that they were in control of, getting themselves up there with the pickaxe and with the shoes and can control the pace that they go up and down, I think kind of helped them ease their nerves a little bit. I didn't
yeah.
see them being too out of sorts. The biggest issue I felt like that any of the teams had here was sadly, again, obviously, Molly and Emily, with Emily struggling to get
Yes.
back to the vehicles when they were running because there was so much loose terrain that they had to
Yeah.
navigate. And I can't imagine that that is good on that knee. Like she was just having a really tough time.
Yeah.
And Molly had some interesting techniques to try and take her attention off that pain.
Yes. So sweet. Try and get her to think of other things, and make a wish, which isn't a good trick because Emily would be thinking, I wish my knee pain would go away. I don't think she'd make any other kind of wish at that point in the race. But
Yeah.
yeah, very nice to try and get her mind off it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, if you're out there and you're doing this race, you would feel horrible if you're partnered with
Mhm.
someone that's going through this pain because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do to physically take that pain away from
Mm,
your partner, but you would still want to try and help in any way you can. So I feel like,
mm.
she did the best that she can with the situation there, and they were just struggling through it really. But what did you think of the vehicles that they all had to navigate, and the trouble that everybody had this late in the race still with the stick shift? And it's always
Are, th-
hilarious when we see that.
are they specifically made for Iceland because they could be driving over ice? I was just wondering because Derek said there were 4 pedals on the floor.
I think he was
4.
exaggerating. No, I think he was
Well,
exaggerating.
like in my car, you got the 2 pedals, but you've also got something that feels like a pedal, but it's actually the handbrake, but it's a foot brake. I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if there was another one, what the hell is it for? Is it something to do with ice?
There was an extra gear lever which they showed in the show, and they were like, "What's
Yeah,
this?" And that's to engage the four-wheel drive. So that's
right.
for the four-wheel drive of that specific. I believe it was a Land Rover that they were driving. And obviously, me seeing that, being really into four-wheel drive and outdoor activities, I was like, I would have chomped at the bit to get into one of those vehicles. And it was quite interesting seeing them really just struggle. I mean, they were like grinding gears and things like that. I was feeling
Yeah.
fearful for those trucks. I hope there was good insurance on that.
Well, I don't know whether it was Emily or Molly driving, but yeah, she didn't even know if she was in fifth or third. So yeah, I think it was like just do your best and get to where you need to get to.
Mm. Edgar here says, I predicted Cody in Survivor the moment I saw him on Survivor. The last time I predicted The Amazing Race correctly was The Amazing Race
Oh,
24. You'll have to tell us who won that season because I can't remember. I'm not that much of a Tar
I'm trying to
historian.
go back.
I'll
Oh
let you
God.
think about that in the meantime. And Edgar then also here says those shots of the teams climbing the mountain were cold. I
Yeah.
love the cold shots in cold Iceland. And that's quite interesting, Edgar, because from memory, you're from Africa, right? So similar to myself, you're not used to this cold weather. It took me a while to adapt to New Zealand winters, I'll tell you that much. And I don't know if I've ever fully adapted moving here to how cold it can get over in New Zealand, especially on the South Island. There's a reason, like I said, I moved to the north and I'm not down there anymore. It's too bloody
Mm,
cold. Even their summers are cold down there. But
really.
yeah, I mean, it was interesting seeing them struggle with the driving and the navigation and so
Mm,
forth. The biggest interesting thing that probably happened here is that Louis and Michelle, they're doing extremely well. Same as Aubrey and David, they're in that first group, but they somehow lose the lead to Derek and David.
yes.
Sorry, Derek and Claire. That comes from
Yes.
behind and just stays the course and navigates correctly and
Mm.
you know gets ahead of them.
You didn't think you wouldn't think that there'd be a lot of ways that you could possibly go wrong because it looks quite remote. You'd think there'd only be a few different roads,
Yeah.
for them to navigate on. So, and I'm assuming the sign was just really small that they couldn't see it.
And again, you're looking at something in foreign. Like, I mean, if you're not used to traveling a lot, you're looking again in things with foreign language, and
Mm,
it looks different. Maybe you're missing something. And also, I think Aubrey and David were rattled because, from memory, Aubrey was driving for the last two legs of the race, and they had to revert back to their previous strategy, which they knew Aubrey wasn't the best at navigating, but I don't
yes.
think she could drive stick shift. So David had to step up and do the driving and kind of navigation here in one, which probably
Yeah.
made them doubt themselves a little bit.
Mm, yeah. And we saw them when they were in this reversed position that they didn't do a great job, um, but they couldn't really. They didn't have a choice this time.
Yeah. But everybody was struggling. I mean, even Michelle doubted her own ability to navigate to the next point, and
Mm,
she was the one who got Louis to turn around and go in the different direction, which made Aubrey and David doubt themselves because they
yes.
thought that both Michelle and Louis were good at navigating. So instead of running their own race, I think, like we said sort of before, I think one of their potential weaknesses at this point in the game has been sort of trying to stay with other teams. But you could also say staying with another team at least means that you know where they are, opposed to losing them
Exactly.
and
You
then you don't
get
know
lost
how
together.
exactly, and you
Yeah.
then just have to hope that you can outrun them in the end when they go
Mm,
to the actual pit stop. But that would have
yes.
been difficult to do with Michelle and Louis because let's be honest, they're pretty athletic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not a great team to get stuck with and be in last place with Louis and Michelle. I wouldn't have wanted to be in that position, but they all do get there in one piece. Even Derek, without being able to, shift his gears down as he's driving on gravel road. For a second there, when they showed the shot with Claire saying, "Aren't you supposed to gear down?" I was thinking,
Mm,
"Oh no!" Like if you've ever driven a manual vehicle before and you're on gravel, you would know it's actually quite dangerous to be on a higher gear. Not only can you stall the vehicle, but the vehicle doesn't actually have as much traction almost on the ground because you're driving in a higher gear and it's kind of
right.
just free flowing on this road. So it was actually,
Gosh.
I thought that he could roll it or something could happen just because of that scene. I was a little bit,
Really?
I was anxious for a few people this episode.
See, I didn't get scared because I had no idea. So yeah, I think having the knowledge can make you scared. Yeah, God, I was like, yeah, keep going, you're fine.
Yeah. Well, they do get there, and this one here, this roadblock is quite an interesting one. Didn't write the name down of the roadblock. I should have. Naughty me. But they do have to go onto this obstacle course almost where they go down and rappel into a cave full of water, get a clue, and then almost like they did last season, they have to go down this river
Canyoning
like
sort of
canyon.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as they go back to their partners. And, as they're doing this, you can see Derek is having the time of his life. He's saying that it's physical, it's easy to
Yes.
do, it's his type of roadblock. He was
Yeah.
the only one that could do this one because he's only done 4 up until this point, and they both have to do 6 according to the
Yeah.
rules. So he's got to do this one and the next one. But I wonder if there's some foreshadowing here, Michelle, because he said this is his type of roadblock. There's no mental thing involved with this, and he's good with the
Mm,
physical. And we know that in the final leg, it's going to be mental. Like they're always going to bring something
yes,
mental. You've got to remember something, have a memory for all these
I
different
know.
things that's happened. So there's potential downfall for Derek if the mental side is going to be his weakness in the final leg.
Mm. And if Emily and Molly are just so strong mentally that if they can keep up the lead, keep up with everybody else, they've got a real chance to win.
I think they are my if I was a gambling man, I'd put a couple of dollars on them because they haven't we thought they may be medevaced out of this thing, but they haven't. They're
Yeah.
still in there. And Emily is the one that needs to do one more roadblock. She also came into this leg with only 4, and there are 5 to 6 now. So Emily
Yeah.
doesn't have the injury from memory. So we could still see her come back and do extremely well
Mm.
here, for the
Yeah.
team and pull it through. And with Louis and Michelle, you've got Michelle having to do the last one. So I think the lineup is kind of a little bit spoiled. Like the roadblock, we'd probably see Derek, Michelle, and Emily go up against each other, unless they do an extended leg where 2 people have to do the roadblock, which we've seen as well before.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know. We
Yeah, I
don't
mean, it's
know.
going to
I
be
mean,
exciting to watch.
were they doing something on a computer? It looked like the final challenge on a big computer screen with a piano. I don't know. They had the piano like the standing on piano like they have in Big. It looked like that. Did you see that?
No, I didn't. I
No.
didn't pay
Look
too
at the
much
preview.
attention to the next week, so into the
Okay.
preview. But yeah, we'll find out next week. Igga's come back here and says Dave and Connor, and I do obviously know who Dave and Connor are. They're
Yeah.
great winners, so that makes sense
Yeah.
why you would have picked them as well, because they're another team that we thought, like after that first season, I forgot who the dad was, what his name was, if it was Connor or Dave, but he got injured, right? It's
I
the dad.
think it's Dave.
Dave. Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So obviously coming back, we knew they were a strong team because even with that injury, they did extremely well in their first season.
You know
And
what? If you've got the gumption to keep going through an injury, you've obviously got enough drive and competitiveness to actually win. If you
yeah,
can keep going leg after leg after leg, you've got something in you
mm,
that keeps you driving forward. You're not someone who quits ever.
yeah. I mean, I felt so bad for Molly this episode when she was in tears, and saying like,
Mhm.
"Oh, it's not going well. I'm just trying to manage my pain." But I've pretty much been running on one leg throughout this whole competition. Like I felt so bad for her.
No, isn't
Seeing
it
her in pain.
Emily?
Emily,
I'm
sorry, I
sure it's
always get it wrong.
Emily.
Yeah, I always get it
Didn't
wrong.
Molly do the swim and Emily's got the bad leg?
I can't believe there's going to be people who are going to be so frustrated at both of
Oh my
us. This is
God.
episode
It's
11.
Emily. Isn't
It's
it
episode
Emily?
it's episode
Vicky.
11. Emily, I think you're right. I think it's Emily
Vicky.
actually. I think you're right.
Someone.
It's Emily. It's
Bigger.
Emily.
Chris. Chris, that's not Chris. Christian. Come on.
Yeah.
It's
Someone
Emily
will
with
know.
the
Someone will
swan
know.
name.
I got corrected on that after the previous recap we did. And yeah, like I said,
Yes, Vicky.
definitely at the end of the day, Dave had an injured leg, Emily and Molly, but they didn't power through to the end like Emily. So Emily is the one with the with the injury.
No,
I
what
can't
did you
believe
just
we're in
put up
like
there and took away?
sorry. There you go. Dave had
Favorite
an
injured
injured leg
leg.
like Emily and
Emily.
Molly, but they didn't power through to the end like Emily.
Emily. See, I'm right. Emily.
Listen, I apologize. This is honestly, I've got a problem with names as it is. If you put twins there, I'm gonna mess it up. I'm just, especially if they're identical, I'm always gonna mess it up. But
Yeah.
I also don't know who is injured. I say it's Emily and Molly. I trust lovable Nikki. She wouldn't do me dirty. Emily
Yeah.
has the bad leg.
Yeah.
But I felt really bad for her. I really felt bad to see her struggle like that and having to push through. But hats off to her for getting in a position where they now can run for $1 million, $500,000 each. And she's doing it next to her sister that she's getting this time to bond. It's been an amazing journey to see it. It would be a pretty big fairy tale ending for them if they do end up getting this. As they go through this roadblock, we haven't even spoken about the biggest talking point though, Michelle, with all the shenanigans with the twins. The biggest talking point is David has to go
Oh my
down
God,
there
he
and he
can't
can't
swim.
swim.
What
Like-
state is he from? I want to know what state he's from that he doesn't swim, because obviously he's not coastal.
They would have put it in, so he's from Los Angeles,
But he's coastal. What
California.
does that mean?
Well, the thing is, here's the thing. Not everybody swims, right? Like some people, it's just
Well,
never been their thing. Like I look at it
yeah.
like my family as well. Like I love swimming. I've done a lot of swimming in my life. My sister hates the water. She doesn't want to get in the water. My brother is okay at swimming, but my sister was never
Yeah.
really that into it. So different people are different, and this was his weakness. The one thing that people will probably be hard on David on this one is they're probably going to say, how can you go do the amazing race and not prepare for everything and not prepare for swimming? But when last have we seen someone have to do a swimming challenge like this? Because there was a lot of swimming in this leg.
There was.
I feel like this was more swimming than what we normally see in the Amazing Race.
Yeah, I mean, two tasks with swimming, and one was totally underwater.
There was like no bottom that you could even like hold on to.
Yeah.
You in the middle, in the second part, like you actually had to be able to swim to do it. And I felt a little bit bad for David. I mean, obviously he pushed through, he went down there. He ends up, and like even though I felt bad for him, it did look kind of funny seeing David on his back, lying to the side, not being able to navigate. Louis coming down, him shouting out to Louis for help, and Louis is like, sorry, mate, like I'm going to grab the clue. It's out of your time. And the way Louis is explaining it, I come down the cliff and I see, David on his back and he doesn't know where he is. And I'm just bolting to get out of there, Louis got his head in the game and you can't blame him. There's $1 million at stake.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Hats off to David for giving it a go. I mean, at least he's in a suit which keeps him afloat.
Yeah.
Um, you know, he's not got the fear of actually drowning from not being able to swim. At least he can just sort of push himself along and get himself down. But yeah, like, yeah, hats off to him for giving it a go. And it
I
would
mean,
have
it's
been
hard to imagine what it would feel like if you're out there and you're in the water, you're in a cave, it's cold as, probably the
mm,
coldest water you've ever experienced.
yeah.
And you can't swim in, and you're saying, yes, he had the suit on, which he didn't
Mm,
have for the second part, and we'll talk about that. He had to actually swim. He was in this water and he's still thinking, like, how do I get out of here? I don't know how to swim. What if I got myself into? What if I'm that guy on reality TV that drowns, type of thing? You don't want to be that guy, like I'm
yeah.
sure all these things are going through your head. And that's what made him panic when he first hit the water and why he didn't see the clue right in front of him, because it's
Mm.
panic of having been in water in a situation that's foreign to him where he doesn't feel like he's in control. But he does
Mind
get through
you,
it.
in the Australian season, they had to dive down for clue in a cave. It was beautiful water, but one of the racers was they can't really swim, and when you see the underwater shots, they had people all around her
Mm,
to actually assist if she got into trouble. She was able to get the clue, but you could see they had a contingency plan. They had a lot of people there to
yeah.
obviously help. Well, not help, but protect her life if
Yeah.
necessary.
Well,
Yeah.
they get through the roadblock. David pushes through. Ultimately, they've lost their lead by this time, and you see Molly killing it throughout the roadblock and
Yes.
basically catching up to David as they go through this. So they leave there together, and then on the way to the next checkpoint, Aubrey has a little bit of a moment where she's freaking out and panicking. And this whole
Mm.
episode, I could feel through. I don't know if you were the same. I was watching this episode and I could feel the tension, and it was palpable or
Yes.
palpable. How do you pronounce that?
Palpable. Palpable.
Palpable, palpable. Like the how they must have felt in that moment,
Mm.
the stress, because one person's going to not be able, or one
Yeah.
team's not going to make it, and you're so
Mm.
close to the money right now.
Yeah. And they were so close as well. They was all so close together. So of course they'd be panicking.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you feel and that's the point at which I tend to feel sad for a team, especially when all the teams are so likable. But that's
yeah.
when you feel sad. Oh, I don't want them to feel this way, but someone obviously is going to.
Have to go. And there's been some very lovable teams in the past, like fan favorite teams that have left in this fourth spot. So,
Mm,
it's something to be very proud of to get this deep in the game in any case. But David also gets her to calm down a lot, and says, listen, I need you in the game right now. Stay calm. I've just pushed myself through something I didn't think I could do so
yes.
that we can still be in the race. And he does
Mm,
manage to calm her down. And they really leaned on each other this episode, because later on, I think David was going to lean a little bit on Aubrey as they get to the next part, because this next one is where they go to Silfra, which I wrote down. It's where the tectonic plates meet each other,
yes.
and they've got to get into this ice water once again and swim and memorize all these different volcanoes and the dates that they erupted. Overall, I think the biggest part of this challenge was the fact that when people got in there, they said they couldn't feel their face anymore, because even though they've got the
Yes.
wetsuit and water was that cold.
Yes.
I hate cold water, Michelle. How are you with cold water?
Well, look, I have asthma, and if I jump or dive into anything that's cold, anything, I tend to come up and I'm and sometimes I do, get asthma in that moment. So I was thinking, Jesus, I would have had to take like all this Ventolin before I go in that water because I wouldn't want something to instantly come. Um, and yeah, diving down and there were so many words that you couldn't even I don't know. I know Claire was able to put keywords with key other English words in her mind or things in her life. But I was looking at them thinking, geez, she's good at this. I
She's
wouldn't
very
think
good.
it's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very good. She had the strategy down. This is the type of challenge where I think I would struggle a bit, not with the swimming part of it.
Mm,
I mean, I'm a decent swimmer. I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I'm like, I can hold
Yeah,
my own.
yeah,
I
same. It's the
wouldn't be worried about
memory,
that,
the
but it's the
memory.
memory part of it that would really freak me out.
Yeah.
On a completely different note, how beautiful was that water and how clear was
Oh,
it?
it's so clear. I know I wrote it down here.
Yeah, like
So clear,
because
it was
Australia is not
amazing.
like that, and South Africa is not like that. If you get
No.
into the water, it's a lot more muddy, and you can't
Yeah.
see through it. And that must be a thing that's sort of relevant to these countries that's in this fertile land,
Yes.
because New Zealand's exactly the same. Like if you go to New Zealand, like lakes over here, you can see straight through it. It's clear water.
Mm,
It's like a swimming pool.
it's amazing.
Beautiful.
Amazing. I know, look, I've snorkeled up on the Great Barrier Reef, and sometimes you can get pockets which are just so clear. And I remember looking down and seeing a whole lot of reef sharks down in this hole that I was above. But
Mm.
obviously not anything like the clearness we saw, in this episode.
Yeah, so beautiful. Lovable Nikki here says on the live, this task was very difficult on top of each thing else because they could not communicate with each
Yeah.
other. And I think a big part of the communication was, we see Louis and Michelle get in there, and Michelle, she's got a motor on her, and she's like, we're racing for first place, and she puts it into sixth gear
Mm,
and gets ahead of him. And then you've got poor Louis in the back. He's like, listen, my mind doesn't work
yeah.
as fast as Michelle's. I'm trying to like memorize all these different things, and he can't communicate with her because she's that far ahead, and she's not allowed to come back to tell
Yeah.
him which one she's remembering. So that was always going to be a recipe for a disaster at the end of it,
Mm,
and they end up getting it wrong in their first go. Where Derek and Claire, they're peaking at the right time now
mm.
at this
I
point,
know
but
a couple of teams actually did I'll do the first, you do the second, or one of them said odds and evens. Personally, when you're trying to remember words, I wouldn't have gone with odds and evens because you're trying to think of one thing and then you're trying to think of another thing. I would have just said, you do the first five, I'll do the next five, and then whatever's left we can deal with. But I wouldn't have done it like that, having two things to think of. And I think that's where he lost what he had to remember, because he couldn't remember where he was in the chain. So yeah, definitely would have done it differently.
yeah, doesn't work out. It's easier said than done sitting on the sidelines, obviously seeing it play
Oh
out.
my
But
God. I wouldn't have remembered anything. I probably would have remembered three.
would have been difficult. Listen, I've got respect for what they had to go through to get that. Christian here in the live saying that last challenge was awesome. And I agree, it was
Yeah.
a great challenge. I feel like this whole leg had just, this is like the old school Amazing Race with some of these physical things that they did. Like, I feel like we've been missing a little bit in the last couple of seasons. And I'm really enjoying seeing this leg play out in front of us. But obviously, the big one here is David and Aubrey having to get into this water. And
My gosh.
David not
Ben.
being a swimmer and knowing that this is going to be a
Yeah.
tough time getting in there. And then, like you said earlier, he had a live vest on, but in this one, he didn't have it on.
No,
He
he
had to
didn't.
rely on
No.
himself, and there was nothing to hold on to. The fact that he even made it through this thing, and I don't know how far they had to swim, like,
Unbelievable.
unbelievable achievement for him
Yeah.
to get in there, because I don't know if I could, like, I mean, I don't know what I would feel like when I'm out there, but if I don't know how to swim, I don't know if I could gate myself to even get in the water, to be honest, like, just
Yeah.
to get to that point.
Yeah. I
Even if
don't
you know
know.
people are around you, you're still going to be fearful that you could drown.
I wonder if he did a few swimming lessons before he went.
You must
Look,
have had some basic training, yeah.
I have one friend who goes to the beach or goes to a resort and never goes in the water. I don't know if she can't swim. I know she hates going in. She hates
Sounds like
swimming.
Molly actually. Didn't Molly say she doesn't normally get in the water either? She normally sends the
Mm.
husband.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, that was on adventure sort of things.
Yeah, yeah.
He wants to do stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know whether she can't swim, but I wonder how confident he was in just basic abilities. Mind you, he's
Well,
like, God, we can swim pretty competently, but I would get up there and it's freezing water and think,
they're all
I've
were
got to
struggling.
remember, I've got to get down. I think even for us, that would be, okay, this is a hard challenge.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's tough, especially if the main thing you're focusing on there is not to drown and to make it from point A
Oh,
to
yes.
point B. That your mind's not thinking logically about what is below you and what you can remember with dates and things like that. Your mind is telling you, I'm freezing, my body is seizing up, I can drown
Yeah.
any minute. I just need to get to the other side. And there was a telling confessional from Aubrey when they got out of the water the second time where she
Yeah.
said, I don't want there to be another freak out moment and what you just went through. So I feel like we didn't see the worst. I feel like, and maybe we can ask David.
Yes, yes, I agree.
David has reached out to the podcast about potentially, being on a recap, and apparently Aubrey's mother listens to the podcast, which is so cool. Hello, Aubrey's mother, if you're
Hi.
listening to this. We weren't aware that you were listening to it, but that's really cool. So maybe we'll get that opportunity, hopefully, if everything sort of settles down, to talk to Aubrey and David about this experience and ask them more questions about how difficult it was while they were doing it, because it sounded like he was really struggling, and the way that it looked when he went out there the second time, and she said, I was looking back at him and I could tell he was breathing heavily. I know him very well, and he was struggling. I was fearful that he was going to, like hyperventilate or something and potentially pass out in the water. I thought it was I thought something more serious was going to happen with
You know
that
what
because
we've had in this season? We have had racers that will actually push on and face their fears, or if they're vegetarian, they'll suddenly eat meat. We have had competitors who are there to race. We haven't had anyone who's like whinged or said, I can't do that, not to any extent, which has been really impressive. If that challenge is in Australia, I'd be more worried about what the hell is under me and going to eat me. We're obviously there in Iceland.
I'm not going to lie. Listen, I've gone through some Spartan race, obstacle course races in Australia where I get into this muddy water and I'm swimming and I'm like, I don't even want to know what crocodiles or snakes are below me. I just need to get from here to the other end. And
you don't
you
want
just
to
motor.
know what can get you.
Yeah. I've
But
done
that
some.
looks so beautiful. I was actually thinking, oh, that'd be really nice to get in if it wasn't so cold.
Yeah. Well, Lovable Nikki brings up a really cool comment here, which I want to dive into. She said, I teared up when Louis and Michelle got to the mat. I was so happy. Then I was full on crying for Aubrey and David. David would have gone into the water a third time. I felt Aubrey's love for him. And I agree with that. Listen, all I'm going to say is that I could feel Aubrey caring for David more than what she cared for the $500,000 or the $1 million that she would have won in this episode, because she was the one who made the call. I agree. David looked like he would have gone back in, and Aubrey was like, it's not worth it. Like, you're worth more than that to me. So that's a keeper. That's a keeper.
That's the most amazing thing ever, isn't it?
Yeah. Because I fully think David would have done it if Aubrey did not give him the permission. If she didn't give him the permission. And this isn't, even for Aubrey to say that, I think was difficult on many levels, because, Aubrey's been a fan. We find out, and they've been severely under-edited this season. There's times where we didn't even know that they were on the race, but we didn't know. Aubrey has been watching full since second grade. So she's, or second, when a second, I don't know how it works in the American school system, but from a very young age, right? And
8.
Yeah, 8 or something like that. She's always wanted to be on the show. She's a fan of the show for so many years. She gets to go on. She's in a Final Four situation. She's so close to the $1 million, and it must have killed her to say, let's not do this. Let's take the 2-hour penalty. But she did it because of her love for David. And that was a very sweet moment to see on the show. And I hope that David and Aubrey, they keep their heads high, because, not many people get to go this deep in the game. And you could not have known that the one weakness you have, and it's, you look at heights. Heights is a fearful thing, and it might get you seized up as well. But you can push through to a certain degree. If you can't swim, you can't swim. You're not going to learn how to swim on the race.
It's hard. It's one of those things that you need years of practice with.
Spoiler alert, Aubrey and David are engaged. Congratulations, Aubrey and David. That's awesome. I'm so happy for you. You look like a great couple. And hopefully we get to talk to them at some point about their experience. Christian says, I'm going to say this, but practice swimming before going on the show. Just saying. Hey, listen, Christian, I get it. And a lot of people are going to have that feedback, and I'm sure Aubrey and David are hearing it as well. I don't think that The Amazing Race has this level of difficulty in swimming challenges. I don't remember many that I've seen where they've had this level of difficulty. And sometimes people get very limited notice as well when they go on these shows, because they apply and they're like, I probably won't get on. And then next thing, the producers call their bluff and they're like, I want to see you in 6 weeks and you're on the show.
And some people, it's literally 2 weeks. I've known people where it's been 1 week.
I agree with Christian on that one. So Christian is saying, and I know Christian is saying,
well, Sorry,
You
I
have to
think
in
they
Survivor.
specifically pick people that can't swim sometimes because it gives them good TV.
Yeah, they do want people on there that are like ignorant to it, and then they can sort of point to them. But I
Mhm.
agree with Survivor. Like if you've watched Survivor for a long time, um, prepare and swim, and don't apply if you can't
Yes.
swim, because we see it every single season, people struggling and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, ultimately here, at the end of this, we get Derek and Claire coming in at first, Louis and Michelle in second. Louis was very emotional at the end, actually, there. He's a very
Yes.
passionate man, said that they started in 10th place and now they're
Mm,
there and they're getting into that second spot. They're going into the finale. They could potentially win it. And Michelle, I didn't see it coming from the beginning of the season. They were late bloomers or mid-season bloomers for me as
definitely,
well.
gosh.
So well
And we
done to
didn't
them.
and they didn't really have an edit that showed that they may get this far. It was quite quiet. I mean, they touched on them, but they didn't focus on them a lot like they did Derek and Claire and Emily and Molly and Lumumba even got more of an edit than
Way
Louis and
more.
Michelle.
Yeah,
So
and the brothers, they had a really
yeah,
big edit as well.
Marcus
So
and
there was
Michael,
there
yeah.
was a lot of big characters and lovable characters this season. So it was
Mm,
hard to, because I do feel like when you look at, and it's interesting because Louis and Michelle, they're very big personalities, but when you look at Aubrey and David, the reason maybe why they didn't get as much of an edit is they seem to be a bit more humble and grounded and normal. Like
oh
in
yeah.
the sense that most people that go into these shows, they're crazy in a good way. I love it.
Yes.
But I feel
Yes.
like Aubrey and David is like, they like your everyday people. And
Yeah.
the camera maybe didn't gravitate towards that as much as for some other people. Lovable Nikki also here says in the live that Aubrey and David were not originally on the cast. I believe they said they had days notice before they went on. So
There you
that makes a big
go.
difference.
Yeah, definitely. I'm wondering if where it says 2 hours later. I doubt they waited 2 hours for them to finish their
Are you
time.
calling Full a liar?
I'm calling no, not Phil. I'm calling editing a liar. They're not waiting 2 hours. I'm assuming that would have been however long that car ride took. So 10 minutes later,
They
but
probably would have told them as soon as, you'd imagine they would have told them as soon as
yeah,
Emily and Molly got there,
got on the
you can
mat.
come
Yeah,
in now.
exactly.
Yeah, come in. And I'm quite surprised that they don't change it now that you wait the 2 hours out at the mat like they used to. You have to
Yes.
wait at the specific
Yeah.
checkpoint.
Well, that's what they do for Amazing Race Australia. And yeah, they're standing there and you're seeing the teams come in and it shows them panicking.
Mm,
So I think it's a really good moment. It's a really good, edit for the show. But
yeah.
obviously nothing big major was going to happen this
How did
episode.
you feel about not seeing a detour this league?
Um, I was fine because I thought, well, they're in Iceland. It's probably quite limited in what they can do. And I was actually surprised to see a town. I didn't think they
Mm.
were going to go near a town.
You didn't know that
Uh,
Iceland had towns?
well, no, I know it's got a town. It's probably got a city as well. I'm
and
not
and a
totally
whole
ignorant.
15 people who live there. Plus the one famous actor that they got from being in a very
Yes.
important
Yeah.
movie to come and be the
But
person at the pitch stop.
but you know, I wasn't I didn't feel bad about not having it because I took that into account.
Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't touch upon? I feel like we've kind of touched on everything. We've got Derek, Claire, Louis, and Michelle, and the twins. Ultimately, they make it. They sort of just scrape in there to the final three, going into this final
Yes.
leg. Who's your favorites? If you had to make, a call, you can't go two people. Who's winning? Who's winning this thing? Who do you
Oh,
think's got it in the
really?
bag? Yeah,
'Cause I got my
I'm
2
gonna keep
teams.
you. I'm gonna keep you to it. One team only. You can't go and say no,
Right.
this one, and this one. Who's your gut telling you? Who's winning this thing?
I need to know what the challenges are. I need to know how much running there is.
Take a risk. Go on the wild side. Just
Oh,
do a
God.
live-in moment like Cody on Survivor. Just be living.
Hmm. Oh,
See,
this
even
is
lovable Nikki
really
wants to know.
hard. Look, Emily and Molly in my heart, I want to win.
Yep.
But I think Derek and Claire, Claire's just as clever as Emily and Molly. It's gonna be touch and go. I don't think it's Louis and Michelle.
Gun to the head. You've got a
Louis?
second to choose. Who do you choose? Who do you choose to win this show? I'll tell you who I think is going to win. I'll give you a couple of extra minutes to think about it. There's a lot of
Oh.
people in the live that are saying Louis and Michelle, lovable Nikki. We've got
No.
Christian and Gal.
No.
We've got Sandy saying it as well. Christian
Hi,
Gal says
Sandy.
Derek and Claire or Louis and Michelle. Hello, Sandy. Welcome to the live. I think personally, I'm gonna go with Louis and Michelle. I'm gonna go with the chat here. I actually agree with the
Really?
chat. I think
I'm
Louis and
not going
Michelle.
for
They've
either.
won 3 times. Michelle, don't be so shocked. They've won 3 times.
Oh,
They only
no,
need to win for a 4th
no.
time,
Okay.
and they can take this thing out. No one else have had more first places. Derek and Claire have just tied them on 3 as well. The smart money is on Derek or Claire, Louis, Michelle to win this. Now, what would be an amazing story for the season would be Emily and Molly against all odds winning it, even with her injury. I've loved seeing their story and sort of evolving on the show, but I kind of feel like them getting to the end is their arc and is already a win in itself. The fact that they kept going. So I'm going to go with I'm trusting Louis and Michelle to take this one out at the end. That's the way I'm putting
All right,
my
I'm going to go for Emily and Molly.
All right, let's see if we're right. And if we all get it wrong and Derek and Claire ends up winning it, then just shows you how unpredictable the show can be. That's what I love about The Amazing Race. It is very difficult to predict a winner based on edit.
Yes.
I did it last season, but I don't think I can do it this season. It's not as clear cut for me.
Yeah. No, it isn't. It isn't. It's quite distressing, actually. Normally,
I love it.
See who's going to win.
I love it. This is how every season should be. I should be on the edge of my seat going into a finale, not knowing what's going to happen. So looking forward to it, to talk about the finale next week and see who is crowned the Amazing Race Season 34 winners. But for now, if you've gotten to this point in the live or you're watching this later on, listening to it, please consider jumping on the Nullified Take YouTube channel to subscribe to the channel. We love the support. We hope we earn that subscription tonight by giving you some commentary and some laughs as we get to the end of this episode in the season. Please hit a like on this as well. It does help with the YouTube algorithms. Consider commenting and letting us know what you think. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? And we'll be back next week to talk, I guess, about the finale. Michelle, anything else from your end?
God, so sad. Just so sad. I love the idea of I know one episode left. I think it's going to be really fun having that piano and the screen, and it looks like something really different. We haven't had anything like that before, so I'm really looking forward. Assuming that's the final challenge, really looking forward to that.
Michelle, we've got one more podcast before the end of the year, which is fine. You can have a break towards the end of the year, but we're not going to wait 3, 4, 5 months before we get you back on. We're going to have to get you back on to talk about another show at some point,
Oh my god.
Because I'm going to miss the chats.
I know. Well, Aussie Survivor starts Jan, so I'm assuming you're doing that.
Definitely be doing it. So we're going to have to talk, even if your husband doesn't allow you to commit to the whole season, we're going to have to get you onto some of it.
Okay.
You shove him to the side.
About anything with my life. I'm old enough to make my own decisions. Yes. I just say to him, I'm podcasting now. Can you turn the TV down? This is what I said before. I walked down the hallway with my chair, my computer, and set everything up. I'm podcasting now. You need to turn it down.
Well, we're gonna definitely have to get you back on to talk some more Survivor or something, because I've been loving this chat. It sounds like everybody in the live have been loving it as well. I don't know what I did wrong this time. Love Nikki, what did I say this time? I'm always saying something that gets me in trouble with Nikki. Well, listen, it's been a lot of fun. We'll be back next week and we'll chat some more about the Amazing Race. And for now, everybody over in the States and in Canada and everywhere else where you're listening to this, have a great day, have a great weekend. And remember also to check out on the weekend, we've got Coach Drew from the Survivor Buffs channel to come and talk about the latest episode of Survivor. That'll be streaming, I believe, at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday over in the US. It's going to be a live stream, so check that out as well. Nikki, I knew she was going to say it's about Michelle Zabi. Yeah.
Yes. No, you know what?
Nikki's got your back, Michelle.
I have been with my husband, you wouldn't believe this, for nearly 30 years. And ever since we were really young, and we've always had the trust, he said, I'm going out to the bar, whatever. And I said, I'm going out. and we just go whenever we want, wherever we want, and we still come back together. But I've always taught my girls that you have your own life and you do your own things, and you don't need to answer to anybody unless you're doing something really wrong. Be good girls, be good people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's podcasting. It's fun. I was
Oh,
more thinking in case you wanted to have you around him on a Friday evening, like I'm sure he's like, why is she spending 2 hours podcasting again on a Friday evening?
You know what? I mean, like if you came to Sydney, I'd probably say to him, "Oh, I'm meeting up with a guy in the city. He's from New Zealand." And you go, "Okay," and I'd be off. Like the only time I would influence anything and be, an influence on his life is if he wanted to go to bed. Like he can't get into bed when I'm in the room here, so he has to sleep on the couch.
Yeah, it's the only inconvenience. You got to go sleep in front of the TV. Yeah, listen, so far from Survivor content now, but I'm sure this is why people still stay here at this stage. And they're loving it in any case. They're loving it. I'm sure everybody loves it, and we've loved having you on. And that's why I said we're definitely locking you in. I take it as a yes, you want to talk Australian Survivor. We're going to be doing some more podcasts in the near future. So everybody stay tuned. Lovable Nikki, you might have to start watching a bit of Australian Survivor as well, because I don't think you watch it currently, but then you can get some more Michelle content as well.
Oh, Jesus. Jeez.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week. Have a great weekend and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.